Hi everyone. I wanted to do a video and I just want to share my thoughts, okay? I don't have all the answers, but I felt like this was put in my heart, and it's something I'm just seeing come to fruition right before my very eyes. And it's just how it's about how God is generally moving in these times in ways that, this is controversial to a lot of people, but in ways that even go outside the Bible. Okay, now before people freak out, hear me out, okay? Back when I had my old YouTube channel, which was erased, I spent a lot of time studying the Native American culture, because in my testimony, I felt like the Lord touched upon the Native American culture through the word turquoise, okay? And looking for answers, I spent countless hours just studying the culture and trying to understand the Native American culture's relationship with God and the history of our country. And I did discover a lot, but all of my information was generally erased. And it seems to make a little bit more sense to me now. So I'm just sharing my thoughts, okay? We know that God has a decisive hand on America, okay? He has a plan for America, whether it be, right now for the millennial reign or after the white throne judgment. I don't know, okay? But he has a plan for America, and he is moving on America. And I believe the Lord will somehow recompense the plight and the conflict of the Native American and the cause of the Native American culture. And I don't know how, okay? I don't have the answers. Let's not jump to conclusions, but I just want to share the things that I've discerned in the Native American culture, studying and all my experience watching the enemy and spiritual discernment, and how it applies to when this country was first formed and when the Europeans first came onto the land and all that kind of stuff, because it matters. And there was a big spiritual conflict, okay? Obviously the Europeans, I'm studying the culture of like the Lakota Sioux and stuff. The Native Americans were God's people, okay? No, they did not have the written word of Israel, but they did know about God. They did have the Great Spirit, okay? They did have the Holy Spirit. And God gives his Spirit to whomever he wants. I do have a video left on my channel how the Native American prophecies perfectly run parallel with the Bible, okay? In Native American culture, their prophecies and stories go by word of mouth. They didn't write down this stuff. It went by word of mouth because they're highly respected families and all that kind of stuff. Very beautiful culture. And but they indeed knew about, Christ, whether, but anyway, now the Lakota Sioux, for example, were God's people. They lived off nature and loved the land and lived peacefully and were highly spiritual. And then the Europeans came as Satan in the name of the cross, which Satan does. Satan manifests as an angel of light because we are not able to see him as a serpent that he truly is. This stuff is actually talked about in the first book of Adam and Eve. But studying what happened when the Europeans first came on the land and started making war and slaughtering and manipulating and deceiving the Native American people and this whole plight and how it still persists today. I mean, the Native Americans is just oppression, genocide. The reservations are like concentration camps, and they just give them alcohol and alcohol and alcohol to destroy themselves. It's a clearly satanic agenda. And studying people like Crazy Horse, I believe the Lord lifted up Crazy Horse. And I also believe at the times when the Europeans first came onto this land and started making war and deceiving the Native American people, that God was with the Native American people, like he was with the people of Israel. I honestly believe that, because that's what I've been able to discern. And I also believe this stuff has been blotted out of history. Because when you have spiritual discernment and you start studying, like watching the documentary, studying the history, you could see. And that's what I was able to discern. Crazy Horse, for example, when you read, the quotes or whatever, the sayings that he had, the folklores of his mentality, he clearly had the humility of somebody that was touched by God. Okay, he was a mighty warrior, but despised murder, despised killing. Stuff like that. It's stuff that in our natural sin nature flesh, we cannot manifest ourselves. It's only if you have the touch of the mighty God. And Crazy Horse did talk about the Great Spirit, that he was being led by the Great Spirit. And maybe the Native Americans, their principles weren't exactly biblical and all this kind of stuff, but the Lord is gracious and good, because they worshiped him in their hearts. And he was with them. He actively was moving with the Native American people. I honestly believe that. I know that. And lifted up people like Crazy Horse. And when you look at the memorials to Crazy Horse, him on a white horse, all in white, it's just Satan like mocking that he was a false Christ or something like that. I mean, when you really study this stuff, you could see the move of God in these people. And watching the documentaries, I think some of the people, how the American army just butchered all of the buffalo to just starve them out. I mean, mountains and mountains of buffalo, guys. And there was an account, a quote of someone in the American army saying, throughout history, our forefathers and the people looking back on what's going on now, the shame is going to be so great that we would have so much boldness to move against the face of God. Something like that. I mean, clearly they knew God was with the Native American people and they kept slaughtering them anyway. It was a battle of good versus evil. And I think that is our core history of this country. That's what I've been able to discern. And I believe this stuff has been erased out of our history books. I mean, I'll repeat myself, when we have spiritual discernment of Satan and God and the stuff manifesting now and all that kind of stuff, when we study history, we can see this stuff if it is present. So I believe God has something to say about all this. That whatever his plan is for America, he's going to recompense the Native American cause. And I don't know how, but, I'm not very discerned in the history of, the birth of America through Christian principles. But I do know what happened with the Native Americans and the Europeans when this land was first, Europeanized. And it's an absolute Satan versus God. And no, God did not lose. Maybe God is, finishing the battle in these end times. Now, 1,000 years from now, at the White Throne Judgment. But all I'm trying to say is, I just know with all my heart and all my discernment, God was with the Native American people back then, living actively, just like in the stories of the Bible. I know it. You can discern it studying the history. So I think this is a move of what is going on in these days. I don't know how. We don't know how. But God has something to say about all this somehow. And I just wanted to share this. I hope I'm being clear, guys. So thanks for listening to this ramble. God bless you. Thank you.